Okay, cool. So, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
This is very cool.
yeah. It's a new thing for me, and hopefully we can get some good come out of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Uh, Today I'm joined by none other than gentleman, scholar, and author, Mr. Jack Adkins. I don't have his latest book here with me, but is the author of Blood of the Dragon, Dragons of Dorwine, and you've recently just released your second book. Is that right?
That's correct.
Awesome.
I've got the proof copy. Weird thing about being an author is it's harder for me to get copies than it is for you. So this is like a proof copy that they sent for me to check out.
Well, that's
But
cool.
mine won't come till today.
Oh, okay. That's got to be an exciting feeling, man.
Oh
I can
yeah.
imagine. That's got to be quite the fulfillment. See everything come
Yeah.
full circle from ideas, or and just out of pure curiosity, were your books taken from some of your D&D sessions?
Yeah, usually so. Usually they'll start as a D&D adventure.
Hmm.
Sometimes I'll actually play through them with some of my friends or my kids. Um, the books are always vastly different.
Yeah.
D&D is totally different than a story. You have the arc and the
Right.
resolution and all that stuff. D&D campaigns are totally different, but that's usually how I do at least all the set design.
Hmm.
So I come up with the different scenarios and the different characters, and the players really help me flesh that stuff out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Kind of. It's almost like the characters are you get to see them as a living, breathing thing, and you can
yeah,
either add or take away to it as you see fit. Kind of fit the storyline. I think that's great, man. That's great.
yeah, it makes my villains a lot better too.
Yeah,
They add a
yeah,
lot of color to them.
yeah,
So
yeah. I cannot wait to get into that. That'd be awesome.
yeah.
Uh, so I guess we'll just start with how'd you get started in this hobby?
So I got started with D&D long time ago. 1989. How about that? Um,
Wow.
the second edition Player's Handbook had just came out in like January of that year,
Yeah.
uh, and I had moved to stay with my aunt and uncle in a small town, and right next door was a guy who was just absolutely crazy. If you read The Blood of a Dragon, Anuka is partially based on this guy, just how he is, and he's very gregarious, just a
Yeah.
wild guy. But he's like, "Hey, you should come play Dungeons and Dragons with me." I'm like, I don't know, what that is. But me and him and another guy just sat up on the floor in his bedroom and played little campaigns, and that's how it all got started.
Yeah.
Somebody handed me a ranger named Flint.
Flint.
That was it, and I started, and he died, of course. But
Yeah, things were brutal back then. I played
yeah,
probably around the same age. My uncles had a source book, and my uncle Mark, who was an esteemed DM at the time, or so he tells me anyway, that I lived all about 30 minutes.
yeah,
But that's not when I actually like truly got absorbed into the hobby. Like that came much later.
yeah.
Probably with the introduction of Critical Role, and then obviously, meeting you all and stuff to really kind of push that along. It's been quite the renaissance for me. I really, really enjoy it. Yeah,
I
it's,
think fifth edition did that for a lot of people because I didn't really play much of other editions because I had family and raised a family. We moved away and all that stuff, and they didn't have Roll20 or Foundry or any of that. So it was tough to
yeah,
find a group living in the middle of Alaska. So
yeah,
um, it really wasn't until we moved back here that I started wanting to play again, and then fifth edition broke, and I'm like, okay, well, this is it. My kids are old enough, so I got them involved and kind of went from there. So
that's cool. That's cool.
yeah,
Um, yeah, it's. I find the fifth edition more accessible to more people, and then now with like virtual tabletop and things like that, it's only going to get better, I believe. As
yeah,
far as like being able to just join a game, like there's all kinds of sources out there now. Like Roll20 actually has like group finders and stuff like that, to
yeah,
where you can find something on the fly that kind of fits your niche thing, the thing that you really like to do, or like the setting that you like. I think it's really cool. And it's like I actually had got to play my first tabletop, or not tabletop session, but virtual session with our mutual friend Audrey. And she had set up a game, and I really didn't know how to navigate the menus or anything, and they were all super helpful as far as like getting all that set up and showing me the ropes on that. So that was pretty fun. How often do you all meet in person to play?
So I have a group currently that when my 19-year-old Zachary, when he was home, we would play in my basement every 2 weeks, every 2 Sundays. He went away to college, so I had to shift gears a little bit. Two of the people from that group still come here and we meet, but then I play virtually with my crazy friend Robert, lives up in Ohio, and then another friend Billy, who's also pretty crazy, but he also lives in Ohio. So we play remotely, and we just use very simple stuff because Robert's not super technical. We use Albert Rodeo.
Oh, I've heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah, very simple virtual tabletop, and we use that in Discord, and we roll real dice, so it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Those guys are old school like me, so they're like, I want to play in person.
Right. And COVID really put a hard stop on a lot of things like that as far as everyone getting together. Like,
Yeah.
my first game had, I think, 10 people at my kitchen table. Yeah.
That's big groups.
Yeah, I know. I learned one thing. Action economy will kill an ancient dragon faster than anything you could possibly do. Like, the game mechanic itself will just absolutely destroy them. Which was still a fun experience. A lot of people don't, obviously in order to fight something that huge, you don't necessarily want to throw that at a level 4 party of 4 players, but I figured why not? Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So what other books kind of inspired you to do some writing and stuff? What's some notable sources on that?
So the first thing that I really read, I went to a little bookstore in Moorhead that's not there anymore. But I went, with my family, we went to shop, and I walked down to the bookstore. I wanted to get Dark Walker on Moonshade because I'd heard such great things about it. It wasn't there. But I found a book called The Crystal Shard by R.A. Salvatore.
Yep.
Had a cool looking elf. I'm actually looking at the picture from the cover right there. And I was like, this looks cool. Got a big barbarian and a dwarf. So I took it home and started reading it at probably about 8:30, 9 o'clock. And I didn't finish till about 3:30. I just read the whole thing through.
Yeah.
And that really set my imagination on fire. Before that, I had read the Dragonlance Chronicles, which those are very good. I had never conceived of like, let's take a real D&D party and write books about them.
Right.
That was very interesting to me. But just the pace and the fighting and those things in the Icewind Dale trilogy, that really blew me away. And I think I've read all of the books in that series, like 30 of them. All the books in the Dristord.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of them here behind me, but I think I've read them all. It's kind of become a thing where he writes a book every year because it's kind of expected, and he's going to sell a ton of them. So, and then of course I've kind of changed as a reader, but those old D&D books were great. That really sparked for me a lot of imagination.
Yeah. I try whenever I'm planning for a session or something. It's like, what's something really cool that I can kind of incorporate into my own party and stuff as to something I think they would enjoy. For instance, I do my big group is a homebrew campaign that I've compiled from ideas from Reddit and all sorts of other sources and everything. But it's good for like spark of the moment stuff or really try improv as a DM. But as far as like reading from an actual module, the only real experience I've got with that, I've read some of Waterdeep, but the one that my smaller group is going through right now is Curse of Strahd.
Yeah.
I was telling my previous interviewee about this, Josh. I said I could not do horror themed stuff at all. I could not sell that. Like most
You
of the
know,
time, it's just completely unintimidating to them at all.
I had to get him to record his sessions because I would love to see him do that.
For sure.
I think I think it would be great. I think
Yeah.
he would be fantastic at that. But I don't know if I could either. I don't know if I could sell it very well. Um, I played in Ravenloft back in the early '90s, and that was sweet.
Yeah.
That was really awesome.
Yeah. That seems to be like a golden standard in today's D&D space is Ravenloft. There's so many people playing that module in that setting that
Yeah.
kind of brings forth like all these new things. Like I don't know if I could potentially get in a spell jammer or or something that wacky, but it's funny you mentioned Dragonlance. I'm really, really, really looking forward to that.
Me too.
I'm super excited. Like I want to get the special edition, the hardback with the different, cover on it and everything. I would love to have like the entire set that they're offering with that, both the digital and the hardback book. But with D&D 1,
Yeah.
if they're doing what they're going to say that they're going to do with like actually providing like the spaces and stuff for your characters to be in, that's going to be wild at some point whenever they finally get
Yeah.
that going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that. Cautiously optimistic
Right.
about D&D 1.
Yeah. About the same as I am for the D&D movie coming out.
Yeah. So, you know how a lot of groups they have the problem of we need a DM. There's nobody to DM. All right, finally somebody gets roped into it. I think it's you in your case,
Yeah.
But I had such a rare situation growing up. I had a group of friends, there were probably 8 or 10 of us, but we had 4 or 5 guys who just loved to DM. So we had to sit down and break everything up and said, all right, so you have Forgotten Realms, you have Greyhawk, I got Dragonlance, which was great. Another friend got he got Ravenloft, Dragonlance, Forgotten Realms. Yeah. Oh, and the fifth guy got Spelljammer when it came out. He did Spelljammer and Dark Sun. So those are really cool.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we had a rotation that was a lot of fun. And I look back now, I'm like, that's pretty rare.
Yeah.
Um,
Did each of you like take a week and
yeah.
kind of rotated it out, gave you plenty of time to prepare between when it was time for you to host versus actually playing the sessions and everything?
Yeah. So typically on Friday night, we would take our girlfriends, go eat, watch a movie, come back. So at like 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night, we would start playing, and we would play at like 6 in the morning.
Yeah.
And then some of us would go to work all day.
Oh,
I
that's
remember
rough.
going to the grocery store, like stocking stuff, just like dead. Like,
Yeah.
oh, you know.
Yeah. It's
We went,
hard. It's hard,
yeah,
man. I can hardly do the midnight shifts anymore. I used to do that for a long time and just go to work the next day, and I just can't do it anymore.
no,
um,
no.
so I guess how do you go about creating like a session, like minis or crafting materials, or what kind of timeline do you usually try to dedicate to like building a session for the weekend?
So, where I have a full-time job,
Mm-hmm.
full-time dad,
Right.
writing career. It's difficult, so I like to use a lot of pre-made stuff. I have some tiles, actually ones that Josh made that he
Yeah.
gave my kids. I like to use those tiles, but I use a lot of digital stuff because it's easy. And
Right.
in the middle of my table, I've got a 32-inch TV, so we can set them up. And I use Foundry a lot of times for maps, and it's really good for moving situations. So you can advance the map and all those kind of things. It works out really well.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of what I do is digital stuff, and I have some Photoshop skills, so that helps.
That
But
does.
for me, the minis are a big thing. I love to play with painted minis.
Yeah.
So that's probably one thing that I spent a little time in is painting minis. Um, I've got about a dozen of these guys.
Yeah.
This is a Drow priestess. I've got about a dozen of them lined up here, ready to be painted. So
Yeah, that's my thing. My group, they'll see like an unpainted mini on on the grid, and they'll say, "Oh, you're not even painted. You're for sure going to die."
He's the red shirt, you know,
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah. Star Trek. Mm-hmm.
yes. Yeah,
I
it's
love
good.
it,
The
man.
unpainted minis.
I don't have any real experience with Foundry or like I would eventually like to do that. I would like to build myself a table to accommodate that because I think that would save me an exponential amount of time as far as creating sets and stuff like that. I think that would add a level of immersion. But it's good too if you can get your group to kind of do like a theater of a mind in
Yeah.
some spaces, especially if you're trying to create some gravitas to a particular situation that they're in and all that. But minis and stuff for the people that aren't really capable of putting themselves in that immersion, it really comes out and really helps a lot in mine.
Yeah.
But, I'll have to check out Foundry. That sounds really fun. I'll have to check that out.
So Roll20 is great because it's out of the box. About anybody can spend some time figuring it out. And I got started with Roll20 in the old days. Sound like a really old man, but like I was writing my own monsters. Like I was scripting
Oh
monsters
wow!
because you couldn't even buy source material from WotC back in the day. So I was creating them, and if you get on and look now, it says I have like 2,000 hours or something, just because I would be online coding all that stuff.
Wow!
Um, so Roll20 now is great. I can just say I want to play this adventure. Rime of the Frost Maiden. Buy it. Everything's set up. You create your characters, and then all the monsters are there. The rolls all work, and the damage. That's really great. Foundry is a little different. You can still buy the books and all that, but it's a different concept. And I think Fantasy Grounds and Roll20 are they're on an older internet architecture, and Foundry is really new and really modern, and you can do a lot more theatrical stuff with it. You can have a lot more interactive things, and it may be a little harder to understand, but it is. If you're starting from zero, I like Foundry because they have a lot of tutorials and a lot of help, and the support's really great. But I buy it and I own it,
Yeah.
so I pay like $1.99 a month for AWS to host it, and I've got 9 games that run on it, so it's plenty of space. It's like 50 gig for $1.99. Me and a bunch of my friends. I have friends in Indonesia we used to play with, so we have games that are on there, and next time we want to play, we just sit down and it's ready to go.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's cool. I'm learning the whole AWS thing now, and it is quite impressive all the things that you can do with that. That is just
yes,
absolutely like whenever I sit and think about if I was to ever start a business, I can see the foundations on how they start creating those instances and setting them up for use and everything. It's really that looks really cool. I'm really looking forward into delving deeper into that.
yeah. Career wise, there's good money in AWS too.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. My professor is pushing it real hard.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So with this second book, how many more do you see yourself writing in the series? How far are you going to push that envelope with those?
So I have encountered two kinds of writers. One kind say, "Man, I don't know. I don't have no idea what the next thing is going to be. I hope I've got enough creative juice to think of something to write." And of course, when they sit down and get started, they do. And then there's a kind that's like me, where I have I have 11 outlines. I wrote down all the things that I have. I have 11 different projects going. So
That's awesome. Yeah.
the Dragon's Dorwine is 2 trilogies. So the third book will be the end of the first trilogy. There'll be some space between them. And then I have novella-sized books for 2 of the characters already planned out. And that's just one continent in my world.
Right.
There's another continent above the line where there's kind of this Arthurian type of world, like this continent where it's knights and it's a lot of politics
Yeah.
and princesses and all those kinds of elements. So it's a totally different feel. And I really kind of want to explore that area. So those are the 2 main areas in this world. And then I have some urban fantasy stuff that I like. One of the D&D type games that I played was Top Secret, and I loved it because it was modern espionage in like a role playing setting.
Oh, that's
So I
cool.
played. Oh, it was great. I played Top Secret and Spycraft. Those are two games that did that. So I have some books, I have some stories already written that are set in that world that I'd like to get into that, just because it's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
So I've
There's
got a lot of material. I just need more time.
That's good, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
To be able to have that sort of creative freedom when with that kind of thing, it's got to be really nice just to be able to sit down. It's like, oh, well, I know where this is going. It's like let's just go ahead and like branches of a tree, it just
Yeah.
it all flows together and everything. I do occasionally. I used to be really good about it, but whenever we would have a session, I would go back through and I'd type up all the notes and everything that's happened. Uh, as of late, it's become a little more difficult to do so
Yeah.
for my initial campaign. Like mine, I decided to call it Dragon Song, and I guess I didn't know it at the time, but apparently it's an actual thing with bards
Mm.
and everything.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'll ever sit down and actually try to write something out to fruition, but it's a nice little concept for me to entertain though. I really like the whole hobby as a whole, and getting to sit down and have that, expressive freedom is really something I haven't really delved a lot into. Never really sat down and thought of myself as a quote unquote writer. Yeah, that's cool though. I really like that. And from what I read of the first book, I really like the writing style in it. It is a
Good.
super good, super easy read. Just really really involved, and you just get absorbed into it. And I'm really
Well,
looking
good.
forward to the second one. So
A lot of people say that a lot of people that play D&D, that kind of it resonates with them.
mhm,
So obviously the fingerprints of that's in there. So
yeah,
good.
and that's the thing. If I'm reading something, like I can especially take out like where the roles kind of took place, and how it all played out from there. Uh,
Mhm.
yeah, and I really, really, I don't know if it adds to the books in my opinion because it kind of puts me at the table with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of like lit RPG without the
Right.
game stuff in it.
Right.
You have to kind of imagine it. I've had people email me and it's like, so Anuka is a rogue, right? About what level rogue is Anuka and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
people are thinking along those lines. So that's good.
Yeah. I love Anuka's character too. He's so charismatic. It's just
He's a
really,
lot of fun, right?
yeah. Yeah. Oh, I bet. I guarantee it. Um, so how how do you go about like acting the part, in your games or like a little role playing and all that? Uh, I find myself pretty limited. My friends tend to give me a hard time about it, but they say, "Which Michael Myers character from Shrek are you going to be today?" it's
Well, so I lived in the middle of nowhere, a rural area in Muses Mill, Kentucky. So I couldn't do sports. I loved baseball. I wanted to play baseball so bad, but I just couldn't. You couldn't get back and forth. When I got to high school, I had our dramatics teacher was my English teacher, and I really connected pretty well with her. So my freshman year, because of some friends that I hung out with, I joined drama, and I loved it. I loved theater. I think I've been either in acting or producing or directing 50 plays probably,
oh wow,
and so yeah, I really love that. And I wasn't an athletic kid. I wasn't a super smart kid, and the way that I would fit in was with humor. I would make fun of things. So I kind of discovered impressions very early on, and of course Arnold Schwarzenegger is one of the easy ones. But I watched all those movies as a kid, and
right,
and so I would do these impressions, and I'd do these different voices, and then I would do that in plays. So that kind of came natural, and I hear those voices as I'm writing,
mm,
and as I'm playing at the table, I try and give a distinct voice to different characters.
yeah,
Um, so that's a little easier for me, and I really enjoy that. And like I have in the current campaign that I'm playing a dwarf. Well, he doesn't have the typical Irish brogue. It's a little bit of a different world. He's kind of a hillbilly. He's sort of like a Carl from Sling Blade a little bit. Um, he's really quiet,
Yeah.
so people think he's dumb. But he's a paladin, and he's had a really rough life, so he just kind of keeps to himself. But when he does talk, he has sort of this cross between Mater from Cars and Carl Childers from Sling Blade.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So
terrific.
growing up in Sandy Hook, it's pretty easy for me. Just put that right on.
Yeah. Same. It's
Yeah.
it throws a lot of people off, like, especially whenever I speak with someone who's came from like New York or somewhere. Someone calls in, it's like, wow, that's a very heavy accent. It's like, oh, I don't
Yeah.
notice it.
Yeah. Exactly. We talk like everybody else
Yeah,
around here.
yeah, exactly. Uh, yeah. So let's talk about like your music and atmosphere while you're playing a game. Do you have any particular sources that you go to for like sounds or like any sort of soundscapes? Obviously, YouTube's a good one, um, and I use it a lot. But I've got like a soundboard that I've got on my Chromebook that if I'm not gonna like really try to do a dragon roar because I just I lack the capacity. But it's I really would like to find some better sources for like sounds and things like that. And I've looked over the DM Compendium, that particular website and stuff, and there's some good sources on there, but not quite something as far as like being able to configure something on like a Steam Deck and just have it all right here at the ready, ready to go.
Yeah, to me that's next level, and I would love to do that. When I started playing D&D, when you could tell when combat was about to start because somebody would start a soundtrack for Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and you would hear it come up in the background, and you're like,
Yeah,
oh.
yeah,
Um, and I don't remember what it was, but it was like Ingve Malmsteen or something would play during our Ravenloft session.
that's
That was really
cool.
cool.
Yeah,
But it was somebody walking over and pushing play on
yeah.
a CD player. Um, I
Rock.
use some ambient stuff. I have Amazon Music, like a paid account,
Hmm.
so I've got access to a lot of stuff. And the problem with YouTube's ads. It kills you.
Yeah, yeah.
But my 19-year-old does to good effect. I'll have to ask him what he uses, but I think he likes. There's some stuff on Spotify that's not on Amazon, but he always has good sounds, and a soundboard would be great. That
Yeah.
would be a brilliant idea to if you could even build your own, and then just do do,
Right. Yeah. Plug it in and just have it ready to go, and for when the moment
which really
happens.
adds to a game.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah. And that's my big thing. I want. Obviously, we're all there to have a good time,
yeah.
but you're putting on a show. It's something that you took the time to create and everything, and you want other people to enjoy it as much as you did creating it. In my
Mm-hmm.
opinion, that's part of the fun. Um,
Yeah.
I like to use Obsidian and stuff for my note taking and laying everything out as far as like how I'm planning a session. And I'll build the character sheet. I'll do like for instance, the website you introduced me to, the Quick Character Creator, and I'll just put in a funny name in there for the character I want to use. I don't typically make anything too serious as far as the name goes, especially in my homebrew setting because it's just wacky. It's just really, really crazy at times. Um, I really like how I can use Obsidian to just kind of. It's like, oh, I'm going to introduce this character. I see this over here. This is what he's all about, and I can just kind of pull that up and have it referenced in multiple different windows on the screen at a time to kind of help seam all that together. I like it really good as a tool. What do you use for notes and stuff?
So actually, for a long time, I used Roll20 because I could link to other files really easily. So I would just have a link to the monster. I would click it, and it would open up in another screen. So I always played behind a screen. So when we had to go to digital for the pandemic, that was a little easier for me. But I've gotten away from that, and I've kind of gone to just like note cards, like big note cards.
Yeah,
And then that way, if the scenario changes, if they go a different way, I just go to a different card, and then it will tell me what the monsters are, or I'll have them on the back. And I like the little printable tints that you can get that have a picture of the monster on the front, but then on the back it has the stats. And I
Right.
hang those on my DM screen. I like to do that too.
That's pretty
Um,
cool.
yeah, it never goes to plan. So I
Yeah.
used to write it out kind of long form,
Right.
but then you scroll back and forth and all that. But the cards, I just kind of spread them out, and that helps.
Yeah. I
I
may have
got
to.
double DM screens.
I may have to give that a shot, and that's something I do have to invest in. I've got a cardboard cutout, and I know you've seen it.
Seen it. You
And I just,
died.
yeah, you died because I'm a huge, huge Dark Souls fan. I
Yeah,
love that whole genre. I love the music, the characters, and the world itself is it's really dark, but it's done in such a way that it just comes off. It's beautifully deadly, if that makes sense. It's like it's not a place you want to go, but you can appreciate the beauty behind it because most of it's like a bunch of ruined cathedrals, rundown
yeah,
towns, and then but they portray the setting in such a way that just gives it this magnificence, even though it is just this dilapidated thing. And that whole series is exponential. Have you ever played Dark Souls?
no.
It's
What's the current one in the series that just came out?
Elden Ring, and
Okay,
it is super good. I
so
cannot recommend it enough to anybody.
I
It's
watch Brandon Sanderson play it, and I get a kick out of it because his running commentary is pretty good.
yeah,
He's very dry, but yeah,
yeah. It's very difficult. It's one of those games that's you don't actually win. You just do a little better each time.
yeah,
It's one of those things. But I would really like to have a setting to where I could incorporate that. And I think aside from the dying portion, no one
yeah,
wants their character to die. But that's the thing about being a chosen undead. You rise again to try
yes,
again.
you
Uh,
die.
you died. um, I try my best when it comes to railroading my characters not to do that as much, especially if they get too sidetracked
Hmm.
on something. For instance, I think I referenced this in the last video too, but my main group got to the town of Valaki,
Hmm.
and one of my players, he's like, introduced the mayor of the town, going. I was sitting there just reading the book, going through, and he's like, hey, I want to be the mayor. Oh, okay. What do you mean? It's like I want to kill that guy and be the mayor now. I was like, you understand what that means that you have to do, right? And in this town full of people and guards and everything. He's like, yeah, okay. It's like, let's see what happens. And that's really what I'm dealing with. Instead of like trying to push the story along, I could be like, no, you can't do that, which I probably should have in hindsight because now it's just a
Yeah,
complete chaos. Um,
yeah.
but how do you go about trying to keep people immersed in like keeping them on track, so to speak, as to what you've got planned for the evening?
Yeah, that's tricky. I make sure every character has some kind of hook, something that um, is a part of their story that kind of drives them, even if it's sort of periphery. Because if they start to get off track, I can leave some breadcrumbs and kind of get their attention. A good example of that recently was a campaign that I played where I play a drow mage that has he was tasked with he tried to assassinate his sister so he could kind of take her place and failed, so he fled. Now he lives on the surface and he is at the far flung corners of the world, but he's always looking over his shoulder. And we started to get kind of tangential in our adventure. We were going to go do something really stupid. So I go to the end to settle our tab, and he gives me change in drow coins, freaks my character out. So then we just completely abandoned this stupid
Yep.
thing we were on, and we went the other way, which was the way he wanted us to go. I didn't even realize at the time that's what was going on, but I thought, oh yeah, that was my son was DMing. I'm like, that's a trick that he's learned from me
Yeah. Yeah. Kind
because
of
it's that hook, it's like
right.
so. That's part of it because I try to make characters, make players, make good, detailed. backstories, so they're invested in it, and everybody wants that part of their character to kind of come out. That's the unique thing. So they want to be able to share it, and I discourage them from sharing a lot in the beginning sessions.
Yeah, yeah.
I want it to kind of be unveiled as they go along. So everybody is sort of eager to get those things out. So then that makes it a little easier. I can just kind of hook them and leave some things out. And sometimes it doesn't happen.
Right.
And sometimes that's okay. I think one of the most fun RPG games I ever had was one that went totally off the rails.
And that can be fun at times.
It can be.
Yeah.
Yeah. My plans did not, I mean, nothing came to fruition of anything that I had planned, but it was hilarious. So,
Yeah, it's usually those moments whenever it really brings the whole table to laughter. And that alone in itself is just, that's worth a session alone. Everyone's there to, having a good time and everything. Like my first big experience, like DMing, I had planned this just a little one shot thing, just kind of get everyone in the groove as to how everything was happening. And at the end, it ends with like it's dwarven captain coming in, and he's shutting down the bar due to like an illegal bear fighting ring, just something crazy. And I was telling the story and everything, and I said, well, then behind this guard and this captain, you just see this huge gaping maw come up behind him and just snap shut. And it was a dragon. And so, not really knowing or understanding the rules enough to an extent, my friend, I kind of gave him this feat that allows him, depending on the dice roll, once per day. He's called the Wizard Lucidity. And he can just kind of, if he rolls high enough, I'll pretty much give him, like he's essentially this wizard that is just crazy eccentric, and he'll tell you, can you do this? Yeah, I can do that. No problem. I got this. Mm-hmm. And he rolled a nat 20. So this guy, being the man that he is, he says, I want to summon a spectral dragon to scare off this other dragon. And the dragon that he chose was the Blue Eyes White Dragon from Yu-Gi-Oh! To go in there and scare him off. And I was like, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. So completely from that point on, I just planned on having, like, the dragon, I rolled against to not be frightened of this other thing with the other dragon stats. Failed.
Yeah.
So I had no choice but to just scare it off. Then they become these huge heroes, and, my one shot turned into the story that it is nearly, it's been over a year now, almost a year and a half. It's been ongoing. My homebrew setting. Yeah.
Player driven. If you can be flexible.
Yeah, it's really hard to be flexible.
Yeah. Yeah. I would like, a lot of times I would keep little adventures in my pocket, like things that I think they might go and check out. I'd have like little skeletons of adventures. So if I have to wing it, at least I have an idea what kind of creatures they're going to encounter and what kind of mayhem might happen there. Mm-hmm. So, but that's tough.
Have you had any experience with like using hordes of enemies? Like, for instance, like a skeleton army, they just have one huge pool of HP and they all share it and everything. I used it in one of our Curse of Strahd sessions where I brought forth this skeletal horde, and they just had to kind of fight through them. But as they were going through, like the skeletons themselves, on the initiative of the skeletons, they attack 4 times instead of just like the once for the horde, especially while they're immersed in it. It can be dangerous, but it's just a skeleton, and they're relatively powerful at this point. My characters, I think they're level 6 or 7, so they can go through and just plow through, skeletons no problem. But that was quite fun using something like that to try to keep them in an area that I wanted them to kind of experience this thing. It's like, well, you can't really leave the town because you have to fight all this, and then you have to wait until obviously they either leave or the spell wears off or whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's a 5th edition mechanic. Is that right?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. Josh and I were talking about that a little bit because that's tough. Yeah. About the closest I've come was we played in Menzo Baronzon, so we had drow houses warring against one another. So they had their cannon fodder slave force of goblins and orcs and stuff, and then they had their drow fighters, and then they had their wizards. And I think 3.5 has some mechanics for that, but we just had to kind of make stuff up
Yeah,
because there wasn't a good way to do it.
yeah, yeah. This was I'll have to send you how that was portrayed to me. It's just a stat block, but it's got everything laid out. How many turns they take per turn. You know what initiative turn they share. You know like their special as a horde things like do if they get flanking and all that. And
Yeah.
it can get pretty wild. That's
Yeah.
something I don't do a lot, but in that scenario, like flanking felt appropriate because they're just completely surrounded. You know.
Yeah.
Uh, so what was your favorite session that you can ever recall that you've had? I know that might be a difficult question, uh,
Yeah.
but if you've had one particular moment in a session that's like I'll never forget that, or you know like a sacrifice of a character, or like a tremendous moment, what's your most noteworthy session to date?
So I have two. One is I played in an adventure. So this was the main campaign of growing up. This is my favorite character. He was a human paladin of kind of unknown origins. Well, they come to find out that his father was like half Nalfeshni demon or something crazy like that. And he was the main bad guy of the whole campaign. And so at level 5, he shows up to taunt us, and I throw my longsword at him and just skewer him and do like 40 points of damage. So
Wow.
I almost killed the main bad guy. We had one round where we just went off on him.
Yeah.
So that was very heroic because everybody was all tense, and if he gets his turn, we all die. And I rolled a critical, and then you rolled percentile, and I rolled like 94. So I just did a ton of damage, and
Wow.
everybody goes nuts, and that was a very heroic moment.
That's
Um,
cool.
on the flip side of that, I was running a campaign. It was top secret. They're all the players are spies, and they're following these Russian nationalists through Washington D.C. And they're driving along in this suburban. There's three of them, and they're trying to be inconspicuous, but one of them's kind of an idiot, so that doesn't work out. And all of a sudden, there's a car chase in downtown DC, and they're heading toward the mall, the National Monument. And the guy in the back seat, like they get kind of close to these Russian dudes. The guy in the back seat pulls up a Mossberg, leans between the driver and the guy in the front seat, and shoots through the windshield at
That's
the car in
awesome.
front of him. So, of course, what happens? Massive concussion.
Yeah.
This shotgun, it blows the side windows out. They end up wrecking the Suburban into the reflection pool,
Yeah. Oh
and
wow.
they fly out of the car, and two of them are sitting there against the side together, and they're just like soaking wet. The car's on fire in the water, and the one that shot the shotgun, he looks over and he says, "So, think this will work?" We just lost it. We're just like, "Oh gosh,"
Yeah.
you're like, "What an idiot!" And then you're like, "Gosh, this is hilarious."
Right.
So I'll never forget that moment.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
think this will work?
That's awesome.
The Russians got away.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It happens.
It happens. It happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very resourceful individuals apparently.
Yeah. Yeah. Roll the windows down. Go shoot the Mossberg. Uh,
Yeah, it kind of brings forth to the next topic. Matthew Mercer has a tendency to say, "Are you sure?"
yeah. Sure. That's what you want to do.
Yeah,
There are some consequences.
yeah. So with the release of Critical Role, how do you think that's uh, influenced the community as a whole? Do you think it sets up like some unnecessary, well, an an expectation of what something can be when someone goes to run a game, or like someone new coming into D&D? Do you think it sets forth some that they're not able to perform at that level, or do you think like it only inspires and stuff? I guess I worded that poorly.
No, I think I get what you're saying, though.
Yeah.
You know, I used to be kind of a real purist in a lot of things. I didn't like, Lord of the Rings adaptation came out. I'm like, oh, they're going to ruin Lord of the Rings, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know, you can see I have my Ty Sharman Etherin shirt from
Yeah.
the time on. So those kind of things where you take something that is a big part of pop culture and you sort of infuse things that we like, that the nerd community really embraces, and you kind of fuse those things together. I think it's good on the whole because it brings people in that otherwise wouldn't have any connection to it. And just naturally what happens, tons of people will come in to play D&D. They're not going to all stay and play.
That's
a lot
true.
of them are going to fall away.
Yeah.
And it really, the big thing about D&D and a lot of those things, it depends on your group composition. If you've got a good steady group, you can kind of manage those expectations. I read something a while back where people were kind of up in arms because they're like, oh man, Critical Role is scripted. Since season 2, it's scripted. And I'm like, well, these are actors. These are voice actors.
Right. Yeah.
This shouldn't be a surprise. Your D&D game is scripted. It's just that only one of you has the script.
Right. Well, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
So it can be bad in that it kind of waters things down. But I think the individual groups are what really give it that, that flavor. And it can kind of protect against that. So that stuff can be good. When it's bad is when a DM is like, I'm not as entertaining as Matt Mercer.
Yeah.
Which isn't fair, because that's what he does for a living.
And he's very, very good at what he does.
He's able to craft a story really well, and he's able to articulate very well. Mm-hmm. And he has professional skills that he's been paid for all of his adult life that, you don't have. Most people don't have as a DM. So I think you got to manage expectations, and then just like with the Wheel of Time thing, I'm not super fond of the show, but it might be the only, high quality adaptation that happens in my lifetime.
Right.
So I'll take it. It's a different thing. It is an adaptation. It's not a one-to-one representation. So, and if I don't like it, then I'll just not watch it, and I'll be fine because I've got all the books back here, so I can just always read them. Or I can listen to the audio. I've got the audio books for all 14 of them, and Michael Kramer and Kate Redding can read to me.
Yeah.
It takes 19 days straight to listen to all of Wheel of Time.
Wow.
19 24-hour days.
That's quite a subset of books, man. That's a lot of material. Golly.
Yeah, 14 books. Yeah.
But
so I think it's a mixed bag. It can be good and bad, about like anything.
That was my thing. Because I listened to the podcast for, a good amount of time before that, like Vox Machina and their first season and everything. It was, I was really inspired to do it, but I didn't feel as though it's like trying to capture that gravitas that he's able to bring and to really act the part and everything. It's very intimidating.
Yeah.
At least it was to me at the time. It's like, what if I just get up there and just start laughing at me for trying to voice this character, or to tell this story, and I'm over there using my Kentucky reading ability, But yeah, as far as the show, I think it's done a lot of good as far as like getting more people into D&D, and it's really helped the culture grow. It really has. Like as far as access to more things, people, or for lack of a better word, like the corporations are able to look at it. It's like, oh, people really like this. Let's make this as good as it can possibly be. Let's bring in all these adaptations and stuff for them to be able to play. And I think that really kind of pushed it along. Pushed 5e into the realm that it is today.
Yeah.
As far as just being able, the popularity has caused everyone else to be like, oh, well, people really like this. And I read some articles, I forget the source, but they were saying that the big thing that D&D was really big in the 80s, but it all kind of stopped whenever the Atari and the Nintendo and everything came out, because video games took such a huge prevalence, over that, and they kind of blamed, not necessarily outright blamed, the video game culture as far as putting D&D on the back seat for a bit, but that really just kind of made sense to me. It's like, oh well, yeah, something new comes along, and it really grabs people in such a way. It's like, oh well, I just want to kind of do this now. This is really great. Sitting there playing Temco Bowl football, it's like, you see the graphics of this. This is amazing.
Yeah.
You don't.
But we should enjoy it.
Yeah.
We should enjoy this because of Critical Role. I can go to Walmart. I can buy a player's handbook, Dungeon Master's Guide, Adventure Guide. I can go to toy section and get scale miniatures.
Right.
So we should enjoy that aspect of it.
I agree.
Yeah.
So as far as you got any advice for new DMs or potential writers?
Yeah, some. So we talked a little bit about Critical Role, and my 19-year-old son is very introverted, very quiet, very shy, but I think he's like current on Critical Role, so that should tell you how much he listens to it. That helped him have some confidence, because I think there are a few components to DMing. You've got to be confident in your story, because that's kind of the structure. Everything sort of rests on that. And if you have a good story, something that's going to draw people along, that makes the next step easier, because then you have to portray the characters. And if you're not worried about your story, then you can portray your characters. If you have a lot of experience listening to somebody else do that well, that will give you some confidence. And as you practice, you can do that. And it's kind of like you've done martial arts. So when you start in martial arts, the punch is everything.
Yeah.
It's absolutely, it's when you first start, it's just a punch.
Right.
But then as you get into it, you realize that the mechanics, everything has to be perfect.
Right.
The force, everything has to be perfect, and you put all of your effort into it. But then when you master it, it's just another punch.
Right.
You throw a punch, and it's natural because you've trained that. And it's the same thing with portraying these characters. When you're comfortable with the idea, and everybody has everybody has a set of ability. You're not going to be able to do really great things. Your players make fun of you because your characters are all kind of the same. You can kind of expound on that, but it's going to be that way for everybody. Everybody kind of has a center base. And when you're comfortable with that, and when you're comfortable with the game mechanics, which is the third leg of that table, then it kind of flows. So I would encourage people. I think a lot of people today that play don't read the rule book, and I know it sounds really boring to do so, but reading the rule book gives you confidence. So with writing, I wish I had paid more attention in English class. I know that's kind of a trite thing, but the thing that I struggle with a lot is grammar. But read, that's something writers have to do. And when I started writing, I quit reading for a while, and I was like, I could really tell the lack. So read things, and now when I read, I pick up on things, and I say, oh, he's setting something up. I know what he's doing here. And then when it comes later, it's gratifying, and I'm like, okay, that's good. So yeah, if you want to write, read, and then just start writing. Probably the key piece of advice I tell young writers: your first draft is going to be terrible no matter what you do. It's going to be horrible. Fine, let it be that way. When you go back to it and you rewrite it, that's when it starts to improve.
Yeah.
I think Neil Gaiman says that the second draft is when you go back to your first draft to make it look like you knew what you were doing all along. That's very true. That's what held me up for like 20 years, because I would write 30,000 words and say, man, this is just terrible. Well, yes, it will be. So.
Yeah, I guess it's important to know that writing in itself is more like the process of forging a sword. It takes many repetitions, lots of investment to get that from the hunk of steel that it is into a refined instrument of what a sword does best.
Yeah. What I discovered in writing my first book, I thought it was me telling the story that I told, but as I go back and read it, it's actually me dealing with some things personally in my life that I never had resolved. So it's very interesting to me, and it makes it very personal. When somebody reads the story and is like, man, this part here really got me. And I'm like, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting thing we don't think a lot of. Even when you're making a sword, 50 years later, people can come back and look at these swords and say, well, this is a Mike Carroll sword. It's got his spirit is imprinted on it because, whatever little things we add to our craft, whatever it might be. So that's very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And Jack, I've enjoyed this conversation, good sir. This has been great. Been a lot of fun.
This is a lot of fun. Me too.
So tell people where they can find you.
So you can find me at authorjackadkins.com. I've got a website. I kind of try to centralize everything. My books are all on Amazon. So The Blood of a Dragon, The Eye of a Dragon, Dragons of Dorwine series. The Blood of a Dragon is free until the end of September. And in October, I'm doing a Kickstarter to help me raise money for the second book, The Eye of a Dragon, narrated by Michael Kramer, Wheel of Time and Stormlight Archive fame, and he's excellent. So it's expensive, but it's well worth it.
Right.
So those are kind of things that I've got going on. But everything's on Amazon, but it's also on Google Play, Apple, Kobo, if you use Kobo, for my Canadian friends.
And I will put links to all this down in the description as well.
Great.
So they can everyone can find it there. And I cannot express enough that, you're just a fantastic writer. I like, reading the books and, just listening to you as, talking and stuff. You're so quick off the cuff and everything. You can tell there's a lot going on in there, and it's really, I'm serious. There has been times whenever I was like, man, I really wish I could find something to say to that, and you're just right there with it. Yeah. Jack is a tremendously talented writer and DM and stuff, and everything that I've seen him do, he does great at. Highly suggest anyone who's looking for a new book to try out, to go out and look at his books, plural now, right? Second book.
That's cool.
Yeah. To go check him out. And you got anything else?
Thank you very much. This has been a lot of fun. I like looking at your stuff you've got there in the background.
Oh yeah,
that's your crafting stuff. Yeah, very cool. I had a lot of fun, and I really appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Jack, for being on here, and until next time.
Next time.
Have a good one, buddy.
See ya.
See ya.